What's up, guys? Who here wants to grow their glutes? That's been a goal of mine for a long time. I've made a lot of videos talking about it, and that's why I'm making this one specifically, because recently I had a lot of people watch a video of like how I'm growing my glutes, which detailed the workout and some explanations around it. And I look back at that video and I've learned so much since then on how to program and structure a workout properly for the most efficient muscle gains. And I've taken a lot of time and energy to learn how to create a good glute workout because I struggle to gain muscle. I'm tall, naturally thin frame. I have to really be intentional about my strategy for gaining muscle. So that's led me to create this video and kind of backtrack and share with you what I'm doing now. Like, this is me last year around this time, and this year you see I have had growth, so it is working. So let's start going through it. I love to go to the gym first and foremost. So this is me working out 5 days a week. I do 3 lower body workouts and 2 upper body workouts. So we'll go through my 3 like glute focused leg days, and I still have well-rounded leg days, so I'm hitting hamstrings and quads. So know that. And this is the formula. So the formula for all of the workouts is making sure I get 1 hip thrust or glute bridge movement. The second would be a squat or a lunge movement. So like a step up, any type of lunge, any type of squat. The leg press is also included there. And then the third would be a hinge, like a RDL deadlift or like the glute focused back extension machine. And then the fourth category is going to be your cable kickback or like an external rotation movement to get like that upper outer glute, getting the glute medius and minimus with those movements. So including 1 from each category. And I do also sprinkle in some like isolated machine work you'll see, like the leg curl machine or the leg extension machine, to focus on either just like the hamstrings or the quads as well. So that being said, let's go through all my workouts and talk through strategy. Let's go. I hope you love to nerd out this stuff like I do. So my first day I call my squat day. At the beginning of the workout, that's where you want to put, like where you're focusing most of your energy on because you're fresh. Most people say this is where you put your compound movement, which means you're moving through more than 1 joint and using more than 1 muscle group, right? So for a squat, I'm not just focused on the glutes, I'm getting glutes, quads, and hamstrings, my entire leg musculature, because I love this movement and I want to work my entire legs as well. And it also just feels super badass to like do a barbell squat, you know what I'm saying? So if that's you, you know, a squat to start is also going to work your glutes. It can work them just as much of the hip thrust, we've found out in research. But that being said, it's not like it works just as much your glutes as a hip thrust, which is more of an isolated movement, but you're also going to get the quads and the hamstrings. So yes, for glutes, a barbell squat is going to target them. So I go hard. 3 sets. I typically do descending reps and increasing weight. So like 10 reps, 8 reps, 6 reps, resting 2 to 3 minutes between sets. The rest periods when you're going heavy and doing big movements are crucial because your body literally needs at least 2 minutes to replenish the energy sources in your muscle cells so that you can push again, so that you can have quality sets that build over time, that you can progress in over time. Like, I want you to look at it like every rep matters, every exercise you're doing matters, everything is intentional. Like, no lazy reps. We care more about the quality than the quantity. So if you're like short on time, I'd rather you do like 2 or 3 exercises than cut your rest periods to just try to get in everything. Does that make sense? So no rushing, take your rest and literally time it. I want to see that stopwatch on your phone, time your rest. The second one is my split stance hip thrust. So I'm doing a hip thrust every single glute day. I like to do a different variation every time, but you can just do like your favorite version of the hip thrust if you want. I have a dominant side, so most people do. So it's kind of helpful to do a split stance version. That way you're working one side in isolation a little bit more, and then you do the same thing on the other side. So it just helps create balance in the glutes. And with that split stance position, you're going to also work your glute medius and minimus, because those muscles have to balance out the hips, which is required when you're doing a split stance. So once again, 3 to 4 sets, descending reps, increasing weight, and I'm trying to beat myself every time, either going heavier that last set, or if I can't go heavier, I'm trying to do more reps, okay? Then I touched on like doing a machine. So I do the leg curl machine this day to just focus on the hamstrings. And then I finish with the cable kick back, and I add a little external rotation as I kick back. So I'm getting glute max, med, and min. And if we look a little bit deeper into this workout, I'm working my glutes in a lengthened position only in one exercise. Only in the barbell squat is where you work your glutes in that more lengthened position, which is a little bit harder to recover from. So that's why I just kind of choose one. That way, when I go to do glutes in a couple days, I've recovered and I can hit it again. The split stance hip thrust is a shortened position, the cable kickback is a shortened position, and the leg curl, I'm not even working my glutes, so of course I can recover. So that's my first day, resting 2 to 3 minutes and going hard that last 2 to 3 sets. Like, I'm always trying to near muscle failure, and you know, that takes an hour. That's day 1. Let me pull up day 2. Day 2 I call hip thrust day because I kind of base it off of like the exercise that I start with. So this day I start with the barbell hip thrust, going heavy. I put a band around my knees, and once again I do 3 to 4 sets, increasing the weight every time and doing less reps every time. So I'll do like 12, 10, 8, 6, something like that. And if I can't go heavier, then I'm trying to hit more reps. If I still haven't progressed from last week, I'll do an extra like burnout set. I'll go back down to like my first weight and get like 15 reps. That way I'm still doing a little bit more than the week before. You see how I'm always trying to progress? Or I'm progressing with my muscle connection, focusing on the lockout, focusing on feeling my glutes. Like all of these little things I want you to be intentional about. Going heavier, if not, add a rep or two. But I want you to veer towards heavier weight. There is a reason for that, for wanting to try to lift heavier rather than do more reps, because it's just a lot more efficient in making gains, because with heavier weight, you're initially gonna have to recruit more motor units, which has where all the muscle fibers are. That way you're going to elicit a contraction and elicit growth. If you're doing like heavy for shorter reps, you're gonna be able to do that a lot more easily, rather than if I'm choosing a lighter weight and trying to reach muscle failure by more like 15 reps, it's a lot harder because there's other things that are like battling you, I guess, instead of just stopping because of muscle failure. There's like the burn, there's distraction, there's just your mind wanting to stop versus, no, I'm actually reaching muscle failure and I physically cannot lift this anymore. You'll know that you're reaching near failure because the weight is moving slower and you're having to like fight yourself to not compensate, right? You're fighting the want to like swing the weight up, use momentum, use other muscle groups. You're just going slow, and make sure that you're, you know, keeping the form right and contracting the muscles you want to be working. And that is when you'll hit muscle failure. So going heavy is the priority. So we've hit our hip thrust for the day. The second one is going to be my squat movement. So I've chosen a split stance leg press. I was doing single leg press, but recently I added in the split stance. So I just put my other foot like a little bit lower, and I'm pushing most of my weight through that top foot, like 70% of the weight, because it allows me to go heavier and to not have to rely on my glute medius and minimus as much. I can really just push through that foot and use my glute max. And it's a squat movement, so once again, you will use your other leg musculature, but when I put that foot high on that leg press, I really do feel my glutes pushing, and that can be nice to mix in those single legs or split stance movements, because you can really focus on isolating one leg at a time. Okay, and then I do my hinge movement next, and this day I choose the glute focus back extension machine, and then I finish with the gluteator machine, which is kind of like a hip abduction machine if you don't have that in your gym, but it allows you to go into extension, abduction, and external rotation. So you're hitting glute max, med, and min. So in this workout, right, we've only done 4 exercises, and we've only worked the glutes in a lengthened position in 1 exercise, which is the leg press. The hip thrust, the back extension machine, and the gluteator all work the glutes in a shortened position. That means it's a little bit easier to recover from. The leg press is the only lengthened movement and the only squat movement that day. So that's my second glute day. And then the last one I call extra glute. Also 4 exercises. This time, instead of starting with the barbell hip thrust, I mix in the hip thrust machine. Once again, you can do your favorite version and hit it 3 times a week if your goal is to work glutes. Why can we do hip thrust 3 times a week? Because your glutes can take more volume than any other muscle group. You're working it in a shortened position, easier to recover from, and yeah, you can just recover pretty well from the hip thrust. You're not really using like your quads or hamstrings that much. So just biasing this muscle group, if you really are dedicated to growing your glutes, like go for it. Hit it 3 times a week. You will be fine as long as you're eating properly, of course, and we're all a little bit different, so play with it. See how your glutes do. Take before photos. Take photos again in 4 to 6 weeks. See, am I changing? Am I going the direction that I want to be? We can only know this if we're documenting our progress. So, little side note there. So I did hip thrust machine. Then I go to my hinge movement. I do the split stance RDL. Again, split stance is going to help you balance out, but you can also just focus on that working leg with this. Isolation, getting deep in that hinge. Then we go to the leg extension machine where I just isolate my quads because I do also want to grow those. And then I finish with the hip abduction machine. This day, I actually don't even have a squat movement. Like I don't work the, well, I do, never mind, erase that. I do have 1 exercise where I work the glutes in a lengthened position. Can you guess what it is? It's the RDL, the split stance RDL. I'm working the glutes in a lengthened position, but the hip thrust machine and the hip abduction machine, you're working the glutes in a shortened position. And the leg extension machine, you're not even working your glutes, you're working your quads. So I'm doing pretty, despite me doing 3 glute days a week right now, they're pretty low volume and just hitting it hard on the exercises that I do have. I'm hitting hip thrust every time. I'm hitting an hip abduction or an external rotation every time. And either I'm going hard with like a single leg RDL or the leg press split stance, or I have the squat the other day. So I really only hit 1 lengthened position, which also is going to help me recover, and then mixing in some of those machine works to work my entire leg musculature. And I am seeing so many more gains with this type of plan than I was ever before. And I think it's because I'm doing less, but I'm doing less better. And I'm just as focused on eating properly, like pushing myself to eat in a slight calorie surplus, which is a lot for me. I have to eat like 2,500 calories a day. So you need to figure out what your maintenance calories are. And if you do want to consider going into a slight surplus of like maybe 200 more calories a day, focusing on protein, of course, because that's the building block to muscle protein synthesis. And if you're not having enough of that or enough calories in your day, then all of your hard work will go to waste because you don't have the right fuel to recover and grow. So if you're making sure you're doing the workouts well, but you're also eating well and sleeping good, you're managing your stress, like all of these things matter so much in physique transformation and getting the glutes that you want. So this is what I'm doing now. We'll check back in later. I'll keep telling you about my progress, but I've been doing these exercises for, you know, a solid amount of time, and I don't frequently change them. And that means that I can progress it like a skill. That's what my last video talked about, is that exercises are really about skill development. Repeating the exercises, getting better at them technique-wise, mind-muscle connection-wise, and then progressing them is the way to see change. So as long as you keep challenging yourself in the same kind of group of exercises every time, you'll see change. And that's why exercise selection matters so much, because we want to change in the muscles that we want to emphasize, like our glutes, if you're like me. So if this video was helpful, like, please let me know, comment below, like this video, let me know what questions you have, and I'd love to like just chat more, so we know what video I can make next. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. If you're new here, I'm Holly. I am a physical therapist, but I mostly train people now. Do like small group trainings in Miami. So yeah, I'm your girl. If you're looking to build some muscle definition, let's dive in deeper week after week. I am here. I'm your girl. I'll see you next time.